Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Monster snow and wind pummel the Northeast. Millions without power. Donald Trump is drunk with power. The Guthrie family still in turmoil with no rhyme or reason to the mix. Not to mention Mexican drug cartel leader gets killed and Mexico is on high alert and going berserk. And we're just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. I'm Sam Bushman, the good Dr. Scott Bradley with me, freedomsrisingsun.com. And, you know, some people ask, are our topics too negative? That was a discussion a little bit ago on the show. And my response is this: there are no topics beyond discussion, only conversations, but they need civility, relevance, and respect for all. But that's important to understand, folks. There's so much going on in the news. I just got back from the Religious Broadcasters event. That was incredible. We can break that down at some point during the next several shows. We've just got too much to cover in the news right now. Dr. Bradley, welcome back, sir.
Well, thanks, Sam. It's good to be back. But you know what? You step out of the studio for a day or two, and it seems like things unravel. You're going to have to spend more time in the studio to keep a lid on it. You know, I mean, nothing going on.
You know, it's interesting. You had your webinar last Thursday, and you send me the topics. Usually we cover them Friday morning. I was out, so we didn't do that. But I look at the topics, and today they're as relevant as they were when you discussed them last week, Doctor.
Well, in fact, you're correct, but there's been more developments on each of them. It's funny. They're kind of a running. You hate to say it in today's acrimonious environment, but there's kind of a running gun battle going on. Some topics that just won't go away, and they sometimes just seem to metastasize and snowball.
They do. It's getting worse, and you got to wonder why. I believe it's intentional. Things don't happen in politics by accident, and I don't think the news cycle runs on accident either. I think it's interference. I think it's a continual distraction, and the list goes on and on. First headline: why are the Epstein files causing such a stir everywhere else but the United States? It's a fair question. Nothing's happening in America. We seem to shut it down and act like there's nothing to it. But other countries are going, wait a minute, hold on now, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, a prince loses his princehood or whatever the heck they call it. And, you know, we got ambassadors and we got government people in different countries that are, you know, you can't say their heads are rolling, but you could sure say that they lost their preeminence in many ways. But it's not funny. It's tragic. It's inexplicable, actually, how probably virtually everything that would be involved with such a file and the atrocious things that Jeffrey Epstein and his cohorts were involved in, almost all of it happened in the United States, whether it's in Florida or New York or New Mexico, or on an airplane between one of those places. It's just astonishing to me that there seems to be well, let's put it this way. I am more and more and more and more, shall I say more again, convinced that there is a cover-up going up because so many preeminent, prominent, rich and famous, powerful, politically connected, I don't know what you want to call them. There's probably more in that list than that are currently in power in the United States or have held power at very high levels, have been inextricably interwoven with the problems. And I think that there's cover-ups going on, and there's some, as they say, splaining to do. We need some splaining to happen. So,
amen to that. And what I find fascinating is they all say that they, you know, yes, I was tied up with Jeffrey Epstein. He was a friend. He was rich and powerful, but we didn't really know what he was involved in. You know we saw the girls around, and we know we had phrases for how the girls looked and performed. I'm trying to be really careful here on radio and TV and all those things. But, you know, I didn't really realize that it was so bad. I thought the girls were older. I thought this, I thought that. And every explanation, in my opinion, just opens up a greater can of worms, Doctor.
Well, yeah,
it's impossible that they didn't know. It's impossible that they can claim ignorance on this. It was the rich and famous and the powerful, and he had ways of manipulating things and phrases that they used to keep things kind of underground, even though it was in your face. It was not blatant enough, they claim. The more we expose those lies, though, what we need, the only answer to this or the solution is to literally get people on the stand under the penalty of perjury and beyond for their crimes and for what did they really know and what did they really understand. And if you didn't understand this phrase, then how come you know this? And the right questions need to be asked to the right people. But I'm afraid we're not going to get anything with this. Their ability, these people who are above the law in America and around the world for the most part, their ability to really dodge this is unprecedented. And even, Prince Andrew or whatever, now they're saying, well, it was bad, but this wasn't really over sex. They're almost starting to do the same thing they did to Bill Clinton. Hey, it's not really about sex. It's about that he lied. It's not about this. It's about that. And yes, those things are true. They did lie. But they're avoiding the real issues. It reminds me of the reason they let Ammon Bundy off and said not guilty. The judge in Nevada basically said, look, the government's too corrupt. We can't proceed with this case. Well, that's true. But what the real case is, they didn't want to continue because Ammon Bundy was getting so much on the court record that they didn't dare continue because it would have opened up a gazillion cans of worms. We're in the same spot where they're willing to admit enough, but of course it's not really no harm, no foul. Bill Gates had to cancel a speech and, he got a sexually transmitted disease from a Russian hooker and this and that, but no one's really digging in. Bill Clinton's going to testify, but in special privileged circumstances. Ghislaine continues to just thumb her nose at the government and plead the fifth. She has every right to plead the fifth, but hey, we're giving her literally, Camp Ghislaine. It's just kickback kind of jail sentence and all this kind of stuff. And everybody's got protection from the original prosecution of Jeffrey, who got special privileges. And the fact is, we're not even about to blow the lid off this thing, Doctor. I don't believe we are.
No, I agree. I think that, they say, we released everything there is. There ain't no more. You guys have got it all. And then we find out, the 3 million documents or whatever the heck they are that they passed out, they're all overly redacted. There's 3 million more at least. And it's like, wait a minute, we got half.
There's nothing to it. It's distracting everybody from my agenda. What a clown show that is. And so it just goes on and on. Donald is now, in my mind, drunk with power, Doctor.
Holy cow. I mean, where do you want to start? I mean, you kind of take the lead because I might just smear this whole thing across the screen. I mean,
let's talk about the news here. Donald Trump is working on what he calls his prosperity tour events. And I look at that and I kind of go, there's no prosperity in the country. I mean, it's just literally propaganda from top to bottom, from the lies about the Epstein scandal all the way to the economy's doing incredible, Doctor. Everybody feels it but you.
Well,
and me,
that's true.
And everybody around you. And hey, don't believe what's really happening in your world, sir. It's awesome. It's like the Lego movie. Everything is awesome. And you just don't know it yet, Doctor.
Yeah, don't believe your lying eyes. I mean, or your pocketbook or whatever. I mean, I find it absolutely astounding that we have, look at the S&P, look at the Dow, look at whatever, it's record everything. But Sam, let's be honest. And your audience needs to be honest. Now, there are, maybe some of your retirement funds are invested in a stock market because of some equity fund that your company was involved in and all this kind of stuff. But the reality of it is that most Americans do not have their ear on the heartbeat of the Dow. They just don't. And to make that the centerpiece of everything and to basically mock it, it's like, no, wait a minute. I'm still paying more for diesel fuel in my hometown and around over the weekend. I went some places that it was like, holy Hannah. Last time I fueled, I talked to one of the local guys that was by another one of the diesel pumps, and I says, is this the best price they got here locally? He says, yeah, it is. And I says, man, they're pretty proud of their fuel prices. Everybody's talking about it, but we're just not feeling that, and again, we've talked about this before. the inflation levels that were brought about by government profligate spending by Republicans and Democrats for the last 50 years, and of course longer than that too, but 50 years is a lifespan of a lot of people. And we have watched things climb through the ceiling. And people are just saying, no, wait a minute. And so when, I don't know, one of the questions that came up that, I forwarded to you had to do with this prosperity message and had to do with, hey, did you see Trump's news conference on this in Georgia? Sounds like we got to take a break. Maybe we can talk about that when we get back.
Yeah, he wants you to believe the economy is just rocking and rolling, and the problem is the Supreme Court, those disloyal, crazy, psychotic, unconstitutional people up there at the Supreme Court are to blame for everything. But don't worry, Donald's going to make it bigger, badder, and better than ever because he's got more laws he can move against the people on. We'll talk about it.
As you all know, Roe versus Wade has resulted in some of the most permissive abortion laws anywhere in the world. For example, in the United States, it's one of only 7 countries to allow elective late-term abortions, along with China, North Korea, and others. Right now, in a number of states, the laws allow a baby to be born from his or her mother's womb in the 9th month. It is wrong. It has to change. Americans are more and more pro-life. You see that all the time. In fact, only 12% of Americans support abortion on demand at any time. Under my administration, we will always defend the very first right in the Declaration of Independence, and that is the right to life.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcast at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. So we're talking about this issue where Donald Trump's on these, quote, everything is awesome prosperity event tours. And the problem is that everything is not awesome. You know what? They say that, a lot of the economic output is down. They say inflation's more than we thought it was. The interest rates are high. People are struggling left and right. Now AI is about to, disrupt the economy even further. Donald wants you to believe, hey, don't worry, the stock market's up. It's all good. And he's making tons of money from tariffs. That's kind of the big discussion, although the Supreme Court just shut down Donald on tariffs. But don't worry, Donald doesn't really care about the, bad guys at the Supreme Court. He wants to replace one of them. We'll get to that in a second. But he's also saying, hey, these guys are basically virtual traitors to the Constitution and to the president. And, man, they're bad guys. Never mind the fact that, hey, in my mind, I look at the Constitution, and Donald doesn't have singular authority to manage trade and tariffs and all this kind of stuff. But nevertheless, he just doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He thinks he can do anything he wants to, Doctor.
This ruling that, like I say, whether you're looking at his prosperity thing, presentation in Rome, Georgia, or you're looking at this thing that came right on the heels of that with the Supreme Court ruling. And I've been saying all along, if the Supreme Court pays any attention at all to the Constitution, they're going to have to rule against him. And they did, but the way they tailored the decision, I mean, Trump came right out of the blocks immediately, instantly, without even taking a breath, and saying, "Oh, to hell with them. We're gonna do it another way." And it's kind of like, no, the spirit and letter of the law sometimes have to be integrated, and so yeah, he's on a tirade, And it's interesting, the voting that happened and the way the decisions were written, it was almost how shall I say, a suggestion box for some of his approaches that might be used in the future by some of the people that he normally considered kind of on his side. So it's one of those things that, it ain't over yet. The fat lady hasn't sung yet. And Trump is absolutely determined he is going to do it. And he is actually implementing by fiat, I guess, more tariffs. And the thing that's interesting is that constitutionally, they didn't abide particularly by the Constitution in the decisions. They abided more in the wording of the law. Oh, you don't have under this emergency power the power to do what you've done. He said, oh, okay, well, I'll look at this other law. And the bottom line is that the delegation of authority that Congress seems to be so willing to weasel their way out from underneath their constitutional authority and responsibility. And, they get this kind of monarchical executive, and they've been doing this for so many years, whether it's an authorization for use of military force or it comes to economic matters. They're shoveling their duty away from themselves and to the president. And that delegation of authority really unbalances and ultimately will cause a great distraction in the nation at the very least, and maybe the destruction of the whole republic. So everybody and their dog seems to be relegating this thing into the dustbin. It's terrible.
Yes, if you don't support the checks and balances and believe in that, Congress is doing a brilliant job, because the finger always gets pointed at the president or at the courts, never at those who really have constitutional, delegated, mandated responsibility and authority for this. Congress could easily come back and say, hey, you know what, we're going to vote on this. We're going to clarify for Donald. He can't point to, this 1974 law and do 10% or 15% worldwide. He can't do this. He can't do that. But see, with the prosperity tour events, Donald Trump trying to take credit for all the economic gains, but yet when anything goes wrong, now the blame is on either Donald, he's a bad guy putting tariffs in place that he shouldn't, or the courts, hey, they got it wrong, or they this, or they that. Now Trump's frustration with the Supreme Court because of their negative ruling on his, but at the end of the day, Congress is responsible for tariffs, and no one's even talking about them. Doctor, if you don't care about your job or your oath of office or congressional delegated responsibility, they're doing a brilliant job at making sure they never take the blame for anything, right?
Well, they are. They're empty suits, and the vast majority of them are unworthy of any kind of trust. And but it's interesting to me. I'm kind of a junkie on trying to keep up with what's a churn, and I try to watch the conferences and the interviews and all these kinds of things, and it's probably to a fault. But so I was on point looking at this Rome, Georgia, I don't know what you'd call it, a festival.
Oh, it's an economic event, right?
Well, yeah, but here's the deal.
Event,
Here's the deal, Sam. I have a pretty strong stomach. And I couldn't take it after a while with the Trump thumping his chest and look at me. You're so lucky to have me. I'm the only guy in the world that really matters. I'm the only guy that's doing anything. Here's kind of my place. He's taking the message out, which I think he should. I think he should take the message to the people. But my heavens, the messenger, him, it's all about him, me, until the point I got so sick to my stomach over it, I had to actually extract myself from his presentation, because honestly, I mean, remember, Sam, when we had our last Monday, when we got together, we were doing a Washington, day kind of review, and we talked about the elegant exercise of power and leadership. You remember that conversation?
Of course.
Okay, you're not that old. You're forgetting that last week, right? But here's the deal. You compare and contrast the selfie-facing George Washington, who was brilliant beyond measure, who had leadership, integrity, character, principles. I mean, you can make a long list of that too, and that's one of my many faults too, is making lists of things once I get going on something. But you compare and contrast the Trumpish leadership, prosperity approach to things with George Washington, and we talked about he was the man of the hour. He was the indispensable man, first in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen. And you know what? Trump's first in his own heart, in his own mind, in his own soul, in his own admission. And that just, you know what? I just couldn't stomach it, and I had to turn it off. So I didn't listen to his
I've liked a lot of what President Trump has done, because he's done a lot of things. He's basically exposed the media for who they really are, being in bed with criminals and communists and socialists and this agenda. He's done brilliant at that. He's been more pro-life than any other president in our modern lifetime. But I've looked at it, and I don't think abortions have really gone down since we forced Roe versus Wade to the states or anything else. They've just moved to murder medication, is what I call it, or chemical abortion. And now they're shipping drugs across state lines, even to states that say that it's illegal. And now the states that are trying to push back about that are just bogged down in the courts and can't get rulings in their favor and everything else, which basically erodes state authority and state power. But listen, last Thursday you emailed me a headline, and it said, Trump's frustration with the lack of the Supreme Court's ruling. All I had to do to make the headline relevant today is take out lack of. Now it says Trump's frustration with the Supreme Court's ruling on his tariff positions. So now he's mad at the Supreme Court because they see the Constitution differently than he does. And so now the question is, will Donald Trump nominate Ted Cruz to replace Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito? I don't even know how that would happen, Doctor. Right?
Well, Alito, maybe he's making noises in the background about maybe it's time to retire. And so Trump has kind of floated this lead balloon, in my opinion, of putting Ted Cruz in there as the Supreme Court justice. And so it's in the conversation. I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know if Alito has got a heart problem or some kind of a desire to maybe go fishing more often or whatever might be motivating this, or even if it's a real thing. But it's been discussed, and Trump has said, maybe Ted Cruz is my man. And there's so many things we could talk about why I think that would be a bad idea, but Ted Cruz is pretty much a Trump guy, and so I think that Trump's big thing is personal loyalty. And the idea is that we're not loyal to the man or the woman.
Only one direction, though, even. Right?
Well, that's true. There's no loyalty going the other direction, but we're not loyal to a man or a woman. We're loyal to the principles that you take an oath to. And if, in fact, we're not able to do that, then we're way off track. And people say, well, Cruz may run for president, and maybe he wouldn't accept an appointment, to the Supreme Court. And in my opinion, he could probably have his fingerprints on things for a lot more years than he would for any 4-year office term. But the fact of the matter is,
that's right. But I don't think he's not even constitutionally qualified to run or be president, for that matter. I know
you're absolutely correct,
but he's not constitutionally qualified.
Well, if you look, let's put it this way: we got to have a really deep discussion. There's got to be revelations of things that have never ever been brought forth in the Ted Cruz saga. And if there were time, we would discuss what, first of all, a natural-born citizen is. He was born in Canada to a Cuban national, to a mother that they say is a U.S. national, that they said on his birth certificates from Delaware. But the fact of the matter is, none of these things, including lengths of time in marriage and including length of time in the country, none of these things have ever been revealed, and I think that there ought to be a checkbox. And I could put the checkbox together as to the things that are missing, or maybe they're there and we just haven't heard them yet. It's questionable.
Hold on. The doctor is making too much sense. I think we need to talk about extraterrestrials. We need more distraction, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, let's do it.
There's a bunch of aliens out there and stuff like that. They're always smarter than us, more brilliant than us, more capable than us. Every time they're always way more powerful, way more than we are. And hey, we can't let everybody know the aliens exist. And well, do they? Well, Donald Trump's press secretary responds. We'll talk about that too coming up. Not to mention the ongoing, partial government shutdown. We'll talk about it all, ladies and gentlemen. Distractions are everywhere. You got to keep your eye on the ball, baby. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live.
protecting your liberties. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. Millions of people across the Northeast are stuck at home with driving bans in effect and blizzard warnings posted as a fierce winter storm brings heavy snow, strong winds, and whiteout conditions. States of emergency have been declared, and for good reason, according to New York's Governor Kathy Hochul.
I know blizzards, but we're talking about a very densely populated area. And that is the danger, as well as people not as experienced with dealing with the severity of a storm like this. And it's that combination, the higher population, the inexperience in dealing with this, that really is something that we're concerned about, which is why we've taken so many steps to be proactive and be ready for the worst.
The National Weather Service says up to 2 feet of snow could pile up by the time the storm moves on. The Mexican military's killing of a notorious drug lord has been followed by violence as cartel members take to the streets of numerous states in Mexico. The BBC's Will Grant in Mexico City.
The killing of Mexico's most wanted man has sparked a wave of violence carried out by his foot soldiers. His men have burned cars and set fire to shops in at least a dozen states across the country. Among the cities affected are the state capital of Jalisco, Guadalajara, one of the cities due to host the FIFA World Cup this summer, and the popular beach resort of Puerto Vallarta, where tourists and local residents alike are sheltering in place. The Mexican President, Claudia Sheinbaum, urged people to heed the updates of the Security Ministry.
And now Mexico's Security Secretary says 25 National Guard members have been killed in Jalisco in 6 separate attacks. On Wall Street this morning, the Dow is trading about 135 points lower, while the Nasdaq is down 118 and the S&P 15 points in the red. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Maybe this is you too. There's enormous frustration right now with healthcare costs. It is amazing. Healthcare costs for families in the last 20 years have almost tripled, and it just keeps getting worse. All this to say, this is why MediShare is so in demand right now. People are looking for alternatives, and MediShare is proven you can save thousands of dollars a year and actually like it more. Over 1 million Americans are now part of healthcare sharing, and MediShare is the gold standard. It's trusted. It works. It's been helping people save money and have peace of mind now for 30 plus years. It's not some big impersonal thing either. It's a community of people like you helping each other. So yeah, if you're frustrated too, here's your chance to make a refreshing change. You'll notice the difference as soon as you call. They're easy to talk to. You can get a price within 2 minutes. Here is the number. Call 844-94-BIBLE. That's 844-94-BIBLE. 844-94-BIBLE.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
Former Sheriff Richard Mack recounts in his book The Proper Role of Law Enforcement how he came to realize while working as a beat cop how wrong the all-too-common orientation of police officers is when they think of their job as being to write tickets and arrest people. Richard Mack tells of his personal transformation from by-the-number cop to Constitution-conscious defender of citizen safety and freedoms. Learn what it really means to serve and protect. Purchase your copy at CSPOA.org. That's CSPOA.org.
Imagine a school where faith and integrity are at its center, where heritage and responsibility instill character, where educating both hearts and minds brings about academic excellence. There is a school in American Fork where character and embracing the providence of a living God are fundamental, where students' national test scores average near the 90th percentile. Based on LDS principles and a love of country, now in our 39th year, American Heritage School is accepting fall enrollment for kindergarten through high school. What would you do for your child? Give them an education that will prepare them for life. Located east of the temple in American Fork, American Heritage School is a remarkable and affordable alternative. Visit us, find us online, or in the Yellow Pages. American Heritage School in American Fork.
I don't know how many people listening are old enough to remember this, but I remember Peter on the Brady Bunch wanted to freak out his sisters and everything, and so he created this UFO deal. And he had a shower curtain, and it was a whistle, and it went woo, and all this kind of stuff. And now we're going to talk about aliens, Doctor. They're coming to get you, buddy. Don't look over your left shoulder, because the press secretary is going to break it all down. She responds to questions on extraterrestrials. What is happening, Doctor?
Well, that was precipitated by some comments that Barack Obama made, and I was watching.
Donald said he released all the UFO files, so there you go.
I don't know. I didn't know that he had said he had released them, but he was going to. But when Caroline Leavitt, when the question came up in one of her pressers that she was doing, I watched the expression on her face. The best expression, I would say, the best description would be bemused. She looked like she was a little bit incredulous about the whole thing, and
I wonder why.
A lighthearted moment, but you know what? Donald is responding. He's saying they've got records and files. Now, of course, if it comes out like the Epstein files, we're just going to have nothing but controversy. But
controversy and redactions, yes, sir. Got to redact.
Well, yeah,
you know,
it's kind of like these little grays or whatever the heck they call them, and you know what? I've known personally people that were very much involved in those blue book kind of processes that were going on. And I mean, personally, the high-ranking military people that I've known and had involvement in that kind of stuff, this has been going on for a long time. And Barack stirred the pot by saying, yeah. and so it comes up, and Caroline says, man, I'm going to have to check with our speechwriters and see what they got going. And now Don's saying, yeah, I'm going to release these files.
So do you believe there's well, I know there's illegal aliens. Do you believe there's aliens, Doctor?
Well, now let me just qualify this. You've got to have a little backstory, just a tiny one.
Yes,
I know.
I understand.
Okay, here's the deal. If you believe in a divine being, I think you do.
Yes,
I'm pretty confident.
Absolutely, unequivocally. Yes,
okay,
sir.
And if
God
that
Almighty
divine
is in His heavens and He loves us. And
okay, you made a little,
and He has not walked away from the clock either.
Okay, so you said something. They're in His heavens. Okay, now so terrestrial has to do with the earth. Okay, so if terrestrial has to do with the earth, and you say God's in heaven, and I think there's a great many people in this whole, not only this conversation, but across the world, that also believe that unequivocally and fervently. And so if someone is keeping watch over the flock by night, so to speak, and they're in their heavens, that's beyond terrestrial, that's beyond the earth. Well, does that qualify as an extraterrestrial? And the idea is that they got to be these little gray guys that got big, elongated heads and eyes, and they're scrawny little buggers. And
but they're smart as all get out, Doctor.
Well, that goes without saying. But the fact of the matter is, define your terms. And I believe that the God of heaven, and has created this earth, and so on and so forth. But this idea of, I had some assignments many years ago that had some security clearances involved, and so on and so forth, that would indicate that perhaps some of the things that people are seeing may be advanced technology developments that are being tested. I mean, I've seen some things with my own eyes.
And if you blame it on the aliens, it's a perfect cover-up, Doctor. Then you just kind of blame it on something that you don't know. You don't have to make excuses. You just have to say, hey, we denied they existed because we didn't want the public to freak. Now we're admitting they're true, but you're still not really admitting the reality of this knowledge. It also could be that there's groups of people on the earth that are smarter than us, that are hidden away by God Almighty, and they don't want us to discover them because they don't want to be caught in our riffraff and scandal and everything else. And so they're just like, hey, we're not going to let you know that we are here. And so if that's the case, they wouldn't be extraterrestrial at all, right?
Yeah, and so it could be any or all of the above. And so this is something that I'm not holding my breath or waiting with bated breath or whatever. And I in a way, maybe this is my bemused face, I guess. I don't know, that it doesn't look much different than my face, but I'm I'm going to look at this with interest and say, let's see where this goes. But
I want to
honestly,
make a couple of claims that I think people really need to understand. This is critical. No matter what the origins of these unidentified whatevers are, and no matter what is in government notes that you can't trust because they lie all the time. And if you ever get to the truth, they'll redact and play the blame game and dishonestly disrupt and whatever. At the end of the day, I don't care what anyone says. I'm comfortable with this knowledge. Are you ready? God Almighty is alive and well. He sits in his heavens and he created the earth and he is master of his creation. And he knows what's going on, and he will not let his children, his sons and daughters, me and you and everybody else on the earth, be obliterated by some unknown, weird, strange force that's going to, enslave us all or going to do this or that or whatever. Those things are not happening. Okay? So if there's technology out there our government doesn't want us to know about, that could be the case. If there are angels or God's servants, that come to the earth for different reasons, that's possible. If there are people on the earth that we haven't discovered yet because they don't want to be discovered, all those things I open up as possibilities. But if you think God's lost control of the earth or that he doesn't exist and somehow we're going to be overrun by some hostile alien force and everything else, you've lost your mind. And you got to remember God lives and he loves us and he is in charge. Make no mistake about that reality check. That is my testimony. That is my conviction. And I'm sticking with it, Doctor.
Well, you make absolutely correct assumptions and wisdom in that. I would add one more little element to that. And that is every time we turn around, we got the tail wagging the dog. And if in fact they can distract from whether it's the child molestation files that they're holding back or the war that they're trying to start in the Middle East, or if the economic situation is such that, we could make a list of all of the things that they want to distract from. This could be a very magnificent thing if you give everybody a chance to be wrapped up around the axle about, oh, ain't it awful, we're all going to die because these serpentine, whatever they are. I don't even know what he's going to say. These creatures from another universe or something are going to come and take us over unless we all unite in a one world government or something. There's just so many ulterior motives that could be involved in the way this thing could be brought forth. Let's just not panic over it. Let's take a chill pill. Let's take a deep breath and look to the heavens for divine.
But to really believe a lot of what their claims are, you have to dismiss God as at the helm, Doctor.
You do.
And I'm not going there. I'm not doing that.
No, I'm not a bit surprised about that. But our education, so-called education system, has been going on for enough decades now. I'm polluted by it, for crying out loud, and I'm probably older than most of your audience. But the fact of the matter is that everything's a kind of a, oh, ain't it awful, we're all going to die kind of, it's a mass chaos, Big Bang Theory
That's exactly
kind of
what
environment.
They want, ladies and gentlemen. And that comes from Satan, not God Almighty. He's a God of order, ladies and gentlemen. Make no mistake. Now, when Jesus Christ did come to the earth, though, wouldn't he be considered an extraterrestrial, sir?
Well, that was
his
what
mother was mortal and his father was immortal. And, that's a unique situation there for sure, but it's under God's direction. Make no mistake. But wouldn't that qualify?
Well, that was my first comment. Well, there's a divinity involved in this thing, and that divinity, although there's a great involvement with things terrestrial because he created this whole environment and it's all fitly formed together according to his plan. But the fact of the matter is that if that divine occurrence is true, then it came from beyond this earth. And why should we fear that? I mean, if God's in charge, for crying out loud, why? And I just don't get the idea that now we've got to have another distraction.
Well, the reason government would fear it is because it'll upset the power structure, sir. The reason you and I would never fear it is because we believe in God Almighty, and we believe he runs this universe and controls this universe, and we believe that we're his children, and he loves us and wants the best for us, and he's provided this earth for us to grow and learn to use our agency wisely and choose him, learn to obey his commandments and have the freedom that affords, and et cetera, et cetera. But I can see why governments or godless folks would fear that for sure.
Well, but that's what's been bred into the kids. I mean, and it's been generational, many generations. I mean, this idea that that everything's ultimately and finally, if you believe the Big Bang Theory, it's all going to collapse back on itself into a
not only
infinitely
that, zombies
small.
are going to merge with the aliens, and then you're really in trouble, Doctor. Just imagine super powerful zombie aliens. Come on.
It just astounds me. Sometimes in marketing things, they play on this element of zombies you just brought up. I mean, it's kind of like, where does all this come from? I mean, but I got to admit, since the death jab happened with the COVID con, I've noted a lot more zombies walking around. I mean, there's mush for brains everywhere. I mean, it seems like
and then you got to wonder some
reason.
of these people like Bill Gates and company that believe in eugenics. You got to question: are they kind of beyond human now? They're kind of super. I don't know what you want to call them. Droid bot creatures from man-made, trying to pretend they're gods, and there's some kind of morphed lower elements. And even if those exist, ladies and gentlemen, God's still in charge. Never forget it. I'm Sam Bushman.
Get ready to be part of something incredible. We're breaking barriers and delivering the powerful stories that mainstream media won't touch. Your support is what fuels our mission to revolutionize journalism and bring you the truth. Join our passionate community of changemakers by donating at libertynewsradio.com today. Together, we're creating the future of news.
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
As the United States boldly stepped forward in the glorious light provided by its new Constitution in 1787, the nations of the earth were in awe of the newfound strength and hope of this free land. Today, the nation stands at a crossroads. A divergence from the original intent put forth in the United States Constitution has brought grave threats to our beloved nation. A miracle is needed if the United States is to survive. That miracle is again the pure application of the United States Constitution. I'm Scott Bradley. In my To Preserve the Nation book and lecture series, I bring forth truths that will help raise up a new generation of statesmen like those noble Americans who founded this land. Vigorous application of these principles will invigorate and restore the nation, and we may become again the freest, most prosperous, most respected, and happiest nation on earth. Visit topreservethenation.com to begin that restoration.
All right, I don't know what to think if Congress is in recess or not. They're supposed to be all coming back and getting down to business there. Problem is we got a partial government shutdown that seems to go on forever. Even if they open up the government again, it's only a few days till another shutdown or whatever else. Dr. Bradley, what do you think this partial government shutdown scandal? They're using it to engender fear is all they're doing.
Well, one of these days I'm going to write a book that's an audio book because you can't put it in print. The title will be, huh? I mean, that you just can't put that inflection into just print. And that's kind of what I mean, that's where I am right now with that kind of expression is that here we go. This is a government shutdown that is kind of did happen or didn't happen. It's kind of like the mark of the beast that was.
But yet it's open and it affects you, but it doesn't. And I mean, I don't even know what the heck it is. To me, it's this government, program that just got put in place in modern times by the Republicans in the first place. And do we even need it? And we never needed it for a couple of 100 years before, 9/11 hit. And they always want to have a catastrophe or some disaster. And then fear leads to greater tyranny is all I'm seeing.
Well, it is, and it keeps us all distracted. I mean, the centralization of the power and our dependence upon government, and it's a mother may I environment. And if you look back 100 years, just 100 years, this was an entirely different nation. And we believe as a people now that we must have permission to do anything and everything we do. And I just put a little addition on my house and, getting through all of that approval process and everything like that. They did the final inspection and everything's good. But they still can't really be done because we got one more guy that's got to come out and make sure it's cleaned up the way they want it to be. And it's like, come on, people. It's not just at the general government level. It's not just at our state levels.
Oh, it's from top to the bottom. If you don't believe it, just ask the PTA president that got, considered a terrorist,
Every aspect of it, there's an intervention by somebody that I don't give a hang about anything they say. And it's all, as I use the term Bravo Sierra way too much probably, but I'm calling that on everything that's going on in this nation right now. And the people have come to expect it. And if your leaders said this, I've told you about this individual that I know very well that, anyway, he was a Nazi youth. He fought on the Eastern Front the whole time and everything. And in one of the filmings we were doing of him and talking about what a mess the nation was, and of course he's dead now, but I asked him, how can we avoid these kind of problems in the future? And in his German accent, he said, follow the leader. Well, that's the Führer principle. That's the leadership principle that the Nazis encouraged. If your leader said it, you do it.
I'm all about that. If the leader's God Almighty, then I'm in.
Yeah. But that's the problem. There's a lot of interveners in the middle that are really ungodly.
They ain't my leaders, though. They're just some imposter thug jump in front of the train, take over the Tea Party plan guys. I'm not following those guys at all. They're clowns. Get them out of the way. Follow the real leader of all human race, which is God Almighty and his son, Jesus Christ. And hey, then you're on stable ground.
Well, I totally agree with you, Sam. You know that. But the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump has even taken a page out of, my 1940 Nazi handbook that talks about the limits and bounds on him are the ones he places upon himself.
Yeah, and that's it.
That's right out of the Nazi handbook.
It is. He's off his rock crazy. He's drunk with power is how I started out the show. And I'm maintaining it. Donald is drunk with power when he thinks he can kill anybody he wants, when he thinks he can just literally sink boats and kill people, when he thinks he can just start wars around the world, when he thinks he can just levy tariffs on everybody else, Congress be danged. This is out. He's drunk with power, sir. He just is.
And that's the thing. I mean, you talk about the military assets, the war-making power of the United States. We've got 11 aircraft carriers. 2 of them are pointed at Iran right now. Now, what does that tell you? High probability, pinpoint strikes. I mean, and if you think this is not war, you're not being honest with yourself.
Yeah, doctor, if you press harder on those Epstein files, we might just have to go ahead and launch that dude. Okay, stop.
Yeah, we might. That's kind of the mentality, or maybe it's aliens.
I wish it wasn't so, but I wish it wasn't so, but I see it everywhere. Well, we used to talk about El Chapo. You remember that? El Chapo was the big bad drug dealer guy, right?
Or El Guapo, which is the fat guy. I don't know, but anyway, go ahead.
Now we've gone to El Mencho.
Is that like a breath mint?
No,
like
El Mencho just got killed. He was a drug killer down there in Mexico, and I guess the Mexican military killed El Mencho, triggering violent cartel retaliation across Mexico. YourNews.com with the piece, and they're saying, hey, if you happen to be a tourist in Mexico, man, you got to just, stay in place. Hunker down and bunker up. Hunker down and don't go anywhere, don't do anything. It might just take you out along the way. And we have created the most unstable situation in the world right now I've ever seen. In my lifetime, I don't think we've been closer to all-out mayhem across the world, Doctor. I don't think in my lifetime we've been closer to it.
Well, the scriptures have been, they've informed us for generations about wars and rumors of wars and the turmoil of the end times. And we live in those end times. And we talk about a lot of these things that are astir, and I'm appalled at what we're creating at the behest of Israel in Iran and in the Middle East, and it'll be a regional war at the very least, and it may sink some aircraft carriers, whatever. But the fact of the matter is that we've got to get close to the Lord and stay there, because to tell you the truth, some of these big forces that are out there are pretty big forces. I mean, ballistic missiles are difficult if they land in the wrong places. And we as a people need to get close to the Lord. That's always my advice and counsel. If there's anything we can do, You start in your own home, start in your own heart, gather those around you love. You don't have to hunker down and bunker up, but remember the source of all goodness. And, we have a God in heaven. We have a Savior. We have all of those kinds of things. And come what may, being right ourselves salvation is an individual thing, whether it's economic or spiritual or whatever. It's an individual thing, and your salvation is not going to come out of Washington. In fact, your hell may come out of Washington or some closely related element in the world. It's just astounding, and it does say "owned it awful" an awful lot, but it's creation of the lack of wisdom of our lessers that are leading us at this time.
It's only awful because of the wickedness of men and mankind. And if we were to turn to God Almighty, if we were to repent and turn to Him, and He'll heal our land and protect us, and it wouldn't be awful. It'll be a blessing. And, I can take on the aliens with God Almighty. There's nothing we can't do if we put our trust in Him. And that's really where I'm sticking with it. I don't know if there's a man on the moon or not, Doctor, but I know this. God is in His heavens, and He has sent His Son. His Son did die on the cross and was resurrected, took up His temple again, even though the Sadducees and the Pharisees didn't understand His meaning at the time. But He lives, and He loves us, and He invites all men to come unto Him and to, keep His commandments. And if we do those things, I'm telling you, we don't have things to fear. We don't need to fear. We don't need to fear the weather. We don't need to fear the aliens. We don't need to fear the drug cartels. We don't need to fear all the different things they want to throw at us to fear. Government shutdowns, whatever it be. If we put our trust in God Almighty, come what may, He will protect us. He will love and protect His people. And so the question left is, are we going to be one of those people? And I pray that I am. I'm trying every day to be, and I encourage everyone to do the same. Isn't that really the clear, stable, reality-based answer, Doctor?
Well, the things that God has brought forth, through His divine revelation. The rule book is revelatory. Okay, His laws exist and have always existed, and the founding fathers recognized that. Blackstone, one of the mentors of the founding fathers, talked about the laws of heaven. The laws of nature and nature's God. He talked about this divine binding to those kinds of laws. We know those laws, and the application of those laws is not onerous. If you want a bigger, badder oppression on you, start violating them. I guarantee that there's going to be something settled on you that you're not as happy with.
And it'll be worse than the aliens, my friend.
Yeah, a gentle hand of the shepherd, I believe, is what we need to have trust in. And he's got his rule book. If you want to think of his scriptures as a rule book, they're found there. I don't know as Deuteronomy is exactly what I would go to, though. The 613 laws, I think they're Bravo Sierra, most of them. But I don't think God cares what kind of knot you tie on Sunday or how far you walk. But the fact of the matter is there have been unrighteous, uninspired men that have intervened in some of those places too. But get close to the Lord. Hear the Spirit. Have a discerning spirit.
Love your God, love your neighbors, where it all starts, ladies and gentlemen, in my humble opinion. What if your neighbor's an alien?
Well, I don't think they are, but, people can check it out.
Yeah, a lot of people have illegal aliens as neighbors and stuff.
They do.
So there you go. And you got to kind of wonder, too, when Donald thinks he has all the power in the world, is he alien? He is alien to our way of life. He is alien to our supreme law. He is alien to God's plan and God's laws when he says those kind of things and thinks those kind of things, without question. Okay? God is in his heavens, folks. Never forget it. I'm Sam Bushman, and this whole program is designed to promote God, family, and country. And if it's that, we love it. And if it's not, frankly, we don't like it. It's that simple. For Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com, and yours truly, I am Sam Bushman. This is Liberty Roundtable Live, syndicated by Loving Liberty Network, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.